All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the life and legacy of former President Jimmy Carter.
Hmm.
He recently passed away at the age of 100,
Yeah.
which is just an incredible
Incredible
milestone.
century.
Yeah.
It's a
And you've given us a really fascinating collection of sources for this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
News reports,
Hmm.
political commentary, even personal tributes.
It's a good mix.
Yeah. So our goal is to really understand
Right.
what made Carter such a singular figure both during his presidency and in the decades that followed.
I think it's really striking when you consider that he lived through an entire century, like you said.
Yeah.
Witnessing firsthand so much change
Hmm.
in America and around the world.
Exactly. Where do we even begin with
Right.
a life like that?
I mean, I think it's crucial to recognize that Carter's journey to the White House
Yeah.
wasn't exactly typical.
Right.
His background, his values, they really shaped his whole approach to politics.
Yeah. I mean, we can't talk about Jimmy Carter without mentioning the peanut farm, right?
Of course not.
It's such a quintessential American image.
Right.
The peanut farmer who becomes president.
It immediately gives you a sense that he's not a career politician.
Right.
Someone who's not connected to those Washington political circles.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that image of the outsider
Yeah.
is the only part of the story.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper there.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't just some guy who walked off the farm and into the Oval Office.
Right.
He was elected to the Georgia State Senate in 1962
Mm-hmm.
and then served as the governor of Georgia in 1971.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty impressive political resume.
Exactly. He had substantial experience in government before running for president.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yeah.
That outsider image played a crucial role in his 1976 victory.
Especially after Watergate.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
The country was really looking for someone that they could trust. Someone who represented a clean break from the scandals and disillusionment of the Nixon era.
This breath of fresh air
Right.
in Washington.
Think about the context of the mid-1970s Vietnam Watergate.
Yeah.
There was a real sense of disillusionment with the establishment. And Carter really represented a departure from that promising honesty and integrity.
Yeah, it resonated deeply with voters.
It did.
So let's move into his presidency.
Okay.
Which, is often viewed as a bit of a mixed bag with both significant achievements
Right.
and some pretty serious challenges.
Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah.
I think it's essential to acknowledge both the successes and the difficulties of his single term.
Yeah.
On the positive side,
Yeah.
he made some lasting contributions to the structure of the federal government.
Okay.
I mean, for instance, he created both the Department of Education and the Department of Energy.
And we can't forget about his focus on energy conservation.
Of course.
He even had solar panels installed on the White House roof.
I know it seems so commonplace now.
Right.
But back then,
Yeah.
that was a radical move.
Totally.
I mean, he was definitely ahead of the curve on a lot of environmental issues.
Yeah.
Now, of course, his presidency was also marked by some economic struggles, inflation, long lines at gas stations.
Yeah.
Problems that, unfortunately, might feel a little too familiar to people today.
Right.
Yeah.
The economic turmoil of the late 1970s definitely hurt his popularity.
Yeah?
And then, of course, there's the elephant, or should we say hostage in the room,
Right.
the Iranian hostage crisis.
Yes. The hostage crisis was a defining moment of his presidency.
Yeah.
And ultimately a very damaging one.
Right.
The failed rescue attempt, the drawn-out negotiations.
It cast a long shadow over his time in office.
It really did.
He later admitted that sending just one more helicopter during the rescue mission might have changed everything.
Wow.
He might have been reelected,
Right.
and his life would have taken a completely different path.
It's mind-blowing to think about.
It really is.
It's a what-if that historians and political analysts still debate today. But perhaps those very challenges he faced during his presidency,
Yeah.
that single term, ultimately set the stage for something even more extraordinary.
What he did after leaving the White House.
Exactly.
That's what really sets him apart.
Yeah, he redefined what it means to be a former president.
Right.
He didn't simply retire to a life of leisure or writing his memoirs.
Yeah.
He established the Carter Center dedicated to human rights, democracy, and global health.
Right.
And that work ultimately earned him the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002.
And his involvement with Habitat for Humanity was just remarkable.
It's those images you see of a former president building homes alongside volunteers. It really speaks to people on a human level.
Yeah.
It goes beyond symbolism, though.
Right.
It reflects his core values.
Yeah.
Service, humility, compassion.
He remained active in politics even in his later years,
He did.
always encouraging people to get involved and participate.
I remember that quote where he told students
Right, yeah.
to decide whether they wanted to be like him or not
Right.
before casting their vote.
What a sense of humor.
I know.
Yeah.
He definitely had a way of disarming people
Mm-hmm.
with his wit and self-deprecation.
Yeah, but underlying that humor was a deep, unwavering commitment to democracy and civic engagement.
Oh, yeah.
He believed in simple decency and the power of people working together to create positive change.
Absolutely.
Especially in today's world, it's a message that
It
resonates
resonates.
deeply.
Yeah.
President Biden, in his tribute to Carter, really emphasized those qualities.
Yeah.
His character, decency, and honor.
He said those values shone through in everything that Carter did.
And that story that Biden told about how Carter personally reached out to him
Oh,
to
yeah.
ask for help with his campaign.
It reveals so much about his personality.
It does, right?
It does.
It's just a small anecdote, but it really paints a picture of someone who was
Yeah.
humble, driven, and genuinely interested in connecting with people.
Yeah, I agree.
But before we get too carried away with all these accolades,
Yeah.
it is important to acknowledge that not everyone views his legacy in the same light.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
This raises some really interesting questions about how we judge historical figures,
Mm-hmm.
especially presidents.
Right.
Carter's presidency was certainly marked by challenges,
Yeah.
and those difficulties continue to shape how some people perceive him.
For instance, some commentators have argued that President Biden is now considered the worst president in recent history, surpassing Carter.
Right. A very politically charged statement,
Very.
for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not our place to endorse or refute such claims.
Right.
What's important is to understand the context of these differing opinions
Mm-hmm.
and how they reflect the complexities of political discourse.
Yeah.
It's rarely about simple black and white judgments.
So what stands out to you about these differing viewpoints?
I think they highlight how we often try to oversimplify complex figures,
Mm-hmm.
Fitting them into neat categories of success or failure.
Yeah.
But Carter's story resists easy categorization.
Yeah. Right.
He was a man of contradictions, of triumphs and setbacks,
Yeah.
of deeply held values that he lived out in both his public and private life.
That's such a good point.
Yeah,
Something to keep in mind as we dig deeper into his legacy.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to consider how Carter's background as a nuclear engineer might have influenced his approach to energy policy.
Oh, that's interesting. I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about that before. It wasn't just that he created the Department of Energy,
Right.
but it was his personal commitment to conservation that really stood out.
Yeah.
Those solar panels on the White House roof were such a powerful gesture, even if it was symbolic.
Absolutely. And even though they were later removed,
Yeah.
those solar panels showed that he was thinking about sustainability long before it became a mainstream issue.
Right.
And especially during that time of energy crisis. It was a bold move.
He was encouraging Americans to do things like turn down their thermostats and wear sweaters indoors.
Yeah.
I mean, today we might take those actions for granted,
Right.
but back then those were pretty radical ideas.
It shows you how willing he was to challenge conventional thinking and lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that same boldness in his approach to foreign policy, particularly with the Panama Canal Treaty.
Ah, yes, the Panama Canal Treaty.
That was a hugely controversial decision.
It was.
Returning control of the canal to Panama was a major shift,
Yeah,
both symbolically and strategically.
absolutely.
He recognized the injustices of the past
Mm-hmm.
and took a bold step towards establishing a new relationship with Panama.
Yeah,
Of course, there were critics
right.
who argued that it weakened America's position in the region.
But for Carter, it was a matter of principle.
Mm-hmm.
He saw it as righting a historical wrong.
Right.
And ultimately, I think it did contribute to greater stability in the region.
And then there are the Camp David Accords.
Yes.
Carter's role in brokering peace between Israel and Egypt is a legacy that continues to shape the Middle East today.
Right.
Some might even argue that it's his most significant achievement.
It's really hard to overstate the importance of those accords.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing Anwar Sadat and Menachem begin together,
I know.
two leaders with such a long history of conflict.
Right.
I mean, that took incredible diplomatic skill.
It did.
And perseverance.
It really did. And while the Middle East peace process remains complex and there have been setbacks over the years,
Yeah.
the Camp David Accords represent a pivotal moment,
Mm-hmm.
a demonstration of what can be achieved through dialogue and diplomacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that even the most intractable conflicts can be resolved peacefully.
Right.
And it's a message that feels more urgent than ever in today's world.
I agree.
But of course, we can't talk about Carter's presidency without addressing the Iranian hostage crisis.
Right.
It was a major setback,
It was.
and one that unfortunately seems to overshadow his other accomplishments in the minds of many.
It's true that the hostage crisis is often what people remember most about his presidency.
Yeah.
The image of those Americans held captive for over a year is deeply ingrained in our collective memory.
Mm-hmm.
And the failed rescue attempt was a devastating blow both politically and personally for Carter.
It's easy to see how that event shaped perceptions of him as a weak or ineffective leader.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember the complexities of the situation, the
Mhm.
incredibly high stakes involved.
Absolutely. And even in the midst of that crisis,
Yeah.
Carter demonstrated a commitment to diplomacy.
Right.
He refused to resort to rash actions that could have endangered the hostages.
Mm.
He prioritized their lives above political expediency.
It's a nuanced perspective that often gets lost in those simplistic narratives of success and failure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I think it's crucial to understanding Carter, both the man and the president.
That complexity, that willingness to engage with truly difficult issues,
Yeah.
is something we see throughout his life, from his early days as a peanut farmer to his post-presidential work on the global stage.
And speaking of his post-presidency,
Yeah,
that's where he truly breaks the mold.
he did.
He didn't just fade into the background.
No.
He embraced a whole new chapter of service and activism.
He really redefined what it means to be a former president.
Mm-hmm.
He transformed the role from one of quiet retirement to one of continued engagement with the world.
And he did it with such incredible energy and passion.
He did.
The Carter Center Habitat for Humanity,
Right.
mediating international conflicts, writing
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
The man never stopped.
It speaks volumes about his drive to make a difference in the world,
Right.
to use his platform for good.
Yeah, and this commitment to service,
Mhm.
this belief in our shared humanity is a thread that runs through his entire life.
It did.
It's a powerful reminder that leadership isn't confined to elected office.
Right.
It's about using your talents and influence to make the world a better place.
And Carter, both through his actions and his words, constantly challenged us to ask ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
how can we in our own way contribute to creating a more just and compassionate world?
It's a great question to reflect on.
It is.
And it leads us perfectly into the next part of our deep dive,
Oh,
where we'll explore the impact and the lasting legacy of Carter's work and what it means for us today. One of the things that really strikes me about the Carter Center
Yeah.
is that they don't just focus on treating symptoms.
Mhm.
They go after the root causes of these global problems.
That's a key distinction.
Yeah.
They're not simply providing aid.
Right.
They're working to empower people and create sustainable solutions,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's election monitoring, disease eradication,
Yeah.
or conflict resolution. The Carter Center emphasizes collaboration
Yeah.
and works hand in hand with local communities
Right.
to build lasting change.
Their work on guinea worm disease is a prime example of that.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a debilitating disease that they've brought to the brink of eradication
Wow.
through persistent effort and community engagement.
It's incredible.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's just one aspect of their work. I mean, they have a multifaceted approach to addressing these complex global challenges.
Mhm.
And then there's Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah.
Carter's involvement with building homes wasn't just a photo op.
No.
It was a true expression of his belief in the power of service.
Those images of a former president, hammer in hand, working alongside volunteers to build homes for those in need,
Yeah.
they're so powerful.
It speaks to his humility,
Yeah.
his willingness to get his hands dirty,
Literally.
literally,
Yeah.
to make a difference in the lives of others.
It highlights the importance of individual action, of people coming together to address social problems.
Right, and that message resonates even more strongly today
Yeah.
in a world facing so many complex challenges.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a better world,
Yeah.
no matter how small our contributions might seem.
And Carter, both through his words and his actions, urged us to embrace that responsibility,
Yeah.
to believe in the possibility of positive change. He often said, we can choose to alleviate suffering. We can choose to work together for peace.
Powerful words,
Yeah,
a call to action for all of us.
absolutely. So what does all of this mean?
Yeah.
What can we take away from Jimmy Carter's incredible life and legacy?
I think it's clear that his life was about so much more than just his time in the Oval Office.
Right.
It was about living a life of purpose driven by a deep commitment to his values, rather than just the pursuit of power.
Yeah, he challenges us to reconsider how we define success,
I think so.
to think about the lasting impact we have on the world.
Right. It's not about titles or accolades.
Right.
It's about how we use our time and talents to serve others.
He reminds us that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, even when faced with cynicism and division, hope is not lost.
Not at all.
And each of us has the capacity to make a difference.
That's a powerful message to end on.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think it leaves us with one final thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
Imagine if every former president
Yeah.
dedicated themselves to service with the same passion and commitment as Jimmy Carter. What kind of world could we create?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is.
It challenges us to imagine a different kind of leadership, a different kind of future.
Right.
And perhaps in envisioning that future,
Yeah.
we can find inspiration to carry forward Carter's legacy of hope and service, each in our own way.